Hey everyone, and welcome back to another video. Today I thought I'd do something a little bit different and look back through Formula One history and try to find a few teammate pairings that I would have liked to have seen happen. Over the years, we've seen many fascinating pairings for various reasons, including explosive relationships like Senna and Prost, Mansell and Piquet, or a more modern one like Hamilton and Rosberg. We've also had ones that are more memorable for a fantastic relationship between the two teammates like Stewart and Cevert or Andretti and Peterson. However, there are still plenty of great drivers that never got to race in the same team together. Many of these I think could have been quite memorable themselves, so I picked 5 of these that I would have liked to have seen. The only rule I used for this is that the two drivers must have actually raced against each other in Formula One, so it can't be something like Clark and Senna. However, they don't necessarily have to be ones that would have been realistic at the time. Before getting into the pairings though, if you enjoy the video, then please give it a like and share the video, and if you want to see more similar content, then you can subscribe to the channel. For our first pairing, we go back to the early days of the World Championship, with my choices being Juan Manuel Fangio and Alberto Ascari. Fangio is obviously one of the most legendary drivers in the sport's history, and for nearly 50 years the 5 World Championships he won remained the gold standard. Ascari, on the other hand, was the most successful driver of the early days of the World Championship after Fangio. He won back-to-back titles in 1952 and 1953, making him the sport's first 2-time world champion, and is just one of 2 drivers to beat Fangio to the title in a year in which Fangio raced the whole season. Ascari's 9 straight wins across the 1952 and 1953 seasons also remain tied with Sebastian Vettel for the most consecutive wins all time. While the numbers don't overall match Fangio's, Ascari's resume is still incredibly strong in itself, and some people from back in the day even think that Ascari may have been the better driver, so these two would logically make for an interesting pairing. Unfortunately, 1951 was really the only year in which we saw them both have a car that could potentially win the title, with Fangio coming out on top, so we never really got to see them have too many battles in World Championship races. Having these two in the same car could have given us a better chance to see them compete directly against each other in equal equipment and give a better understanding of how they stack up against each other. Unfortunately, Ascari's life would be cut short testing a sports car at Monza in 1855, so had that not happened, perhaps we could have gotten a few more battles between the two legends in the next couple of years, regardless of whether they are teammates or not. For our next pairing, we move ahead a bit to the 1960s. Jim Clark was arguably the most legendary driver of the era, which was full of legends. In addition to Clark, there are other champions he raced against, including Jack Brabham, Graham Hill, Jackie Stewart, John Surtees, and Denny Hulme. However, the driver that legend has that Clark feared most in the era is not on that list. Instead, it was a driver who won his 4 Grand Prix named Dan Gurney. Gurney was a driver that was much better than his records would indicate, but was never at the right team at the right time. He won for Porsche in 1962, who then pulled out of the sport, then joined Brabham before leaving them right before they became champions to start his own team, Eagle. He then went on to win a race for his own team in 1967, but the car was unreliable, so consistent results were hard to come by. Since Clark thought so highly of Gurney and the fact that Gurney never got to truly prove just how good he was in Formula One, it would have been interesting if they had raced in the same team together to see how they'd match up. It would have given Clark another star-caliber driver on top of Graham Hill to show that he could beat in the same car, or it could have given Gurney the opportunity to show that he could match the yardstick of the era. While already legendary himself, Gurney could have become even more of a legend had he been able to compete with Clark, while Clark could have just added further to his own legend. We don't move too far ahead for my next pairing, and that would be Jackie Stewart and Schumacher and Rindt. Both Stewart and Rindt came into Formula One around the same time, competing in their first full season in 1965, and both drivers saw some early success in their careers. Stewart would go on to win 3 titles in 1969, 1971, and 1973, while Rindt would win his sole title in 1970 after being tragically killed in an accident at Monza that year. While Rindt was supposedly contemplating retirement in the near future, he surely had the talent to win more titles had he continued to race. The two are also great friends off the track, and in the years since, Stewart has listed Rindt as his greatest rival. With the two friends and rivals being 2 of the quickest drivers on the grid following the death of Jim Clark in 1968, it could have been an interesting battle to see exactly which of the two would come out on top. Stewart seems to hold more of a legend status of the two drivers today, but it doesn't take away that Rindt was surely at the worst very close to the same level. Had this pairing actually happened, then perhaps Rindt could have shown just how good he was and made him be remembered for more than being the sport's lone posthumous world champion. This next one I have didn't have the longest overlap in the careers of the two drivers, and they are Niki Lauda and Gilles Villeneuve. I think this one could have been fascinating because they could have been two completely different contrasting styles. You have Villeneuve, who is always flat out and trying to push to the limit, while on the other side there's Lauda, who may not have been the quickest with raw speed, but knew how to be patient and let the race come to him. Imagine putting these two in the same team competing for the championship, such as Ferrari in 1979, or perhaps a few years later at Ferrari in 1982. It could have led to a very interesting championship battle. Unfortunately, as we know, Villeneuve would tragically die in a crash shortly into the 1982 season, so under that circumstance, it wouldn't be able to play out over the course of the full season. Just thinking about adding Villeneuve into the mix for the years beyond his death with all the other stars of the 1980s would have been fascinating, though, and a teammate battle with really any of them in Villeneuve would surely have been entertaining to see. Of the five, the extreme contrast in styles of the two drivers may make this the one that I wish I could have seen the most. For my final pairing, I am Michael Schumacher and Mika Hakkinen. Schumacher was certainly the dominant driver in Formula One throughout his career, but during the era there were a few drivers that were able to rival him. Probably the greatest of these rivals was Hakkinen. The two fought hard for the championship in 1998 and 2000, with Hakkinen taking the title in 98 and Schumacher in 2000, and likely would have fought for the 1999 title as well had Schumacher not broke his leg at a crash at Silverstone. Had they been matched together in the same team at this time, then perhaps this rivalry could have been even greater. At his peak, some thought that Hakkinen was the stronger qualifier of the pair, and if they were teammates at the time, then perhaps he could have used this to his advantage, while Schumacher seemed to have a strength of building a team around him. This would have given the opportunity to both of these drivers to use their best qualities to their advantage and see which one would come out on top, and perhaps add a bit more to their title battles. There were rumors of Hakkinen joining Benetton while Schumacher was there, and then rumors of Schumacher joining McLaren when Hakkinen was there, so perhaps this one did have a chance at happening, but we're instead left to wonder what could have happened instead. So there's 5 teammate pairings that I personally would have liked to have seen. Let me know how you think some of these could have turned out, and also which one of these you would have liked to have seen the most. Also, I'd be interested in hearing if you have any other pairings that you wish you could have seen over the years. Thanks for watching.